Welcome back to Baltimore's Camden Yards in the White Sox telecasting booth with Steve Stone, who won 25 in 1980. No other Orioles pitcher has ever won 25 in a single season. 100 victories. He won a quarter of them in 1980. Memories of that 80 season.
I can hardly remember back that far. Just don't mention anything to Jim Palmer. It still aggravates him. But that's the only record that he doesn't have as far as Oriole pitching is concerned.
Now, this man caught you a lot next to you, right?
I know. It was a big difference when he got to our ball club. He kind of rounded out our pitching staff. But, Steve, can you remember what a difference it was coming from the White Sox to the Orioles, and just the team chemistry changed when you were there?
Something happened, Rick. When I came here, I do remember that the first month or so I was here, I had a couple guys come up to me, and they talked about the winning philosophy that this team had. And they realized every game out, they were going to be better than the other team. They caught the ball, they hit the ball, they didn't score a lot, but they scored enough to win. And then from a pitching standpoint, the defense was spectacular. And of course, throwing to this guy was absolutely a pleasure because he blocked everything in the dirt, he threw guys out when they tried to steal, and he was by far the best catcher I ever threw to.
Now, one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you tonight was because since the season started, and we're only about 20 games into it, he's mentioned your name 10 times already this season.
Well, that's only because when he caught me, he had to nurse me through so many of those tough situations. But I will tell you that coming over here was one of the great things that ever happened to me in my career. And being associated with Baltimore, the kind of years that we had, the kind of teammates that I have, Eddie Murray was spectacular and a Hall of Famer, one of only two switch hitters to hit 500-plus home runs. Al Bumbry in center field in 1980 had 200 hits. This guy threw everybody out most of the season. And the pitching staff, Palmer had 3 Cy Young Awards. Mike Flanagan had 1. Dennis Martinez had 245 wins. And Scotty McGregor might have been the second best left-hander in the league. I was number 5 at that point, but worked out real well.
Steve, I often talk about how important it is today to have that communication between pitcher-catcher that really took us a long way. It was so much fun to come out to the mound, and you knew exactly what you wanted to do. All you had to do was relay that information to me, and it made good chemistry. In today's game, you don't see that quite as much anymore as it was in our day.
I think, Rick, what happened was today, you see a lot of game plans thought out by the pitching coach. Then he relays it to the catcher, and then the catcher pretty much calls the entire game without a lot of communication from the pitcher. In our day, what happened was you and I would sit and talk about it. We would be in the meetings. You'd hear how everybody was going to do. You heard of all the soft spots of the hitter. But I think Rick was smart enough to realize that he went with my strength first. Then you go to the hitter's weakness. And that really is the key to getting hitters out and having that good communication. If he and I are thinking along the same lines, I'm going to throw better than if he and I are always at odds. If he's calling something, I don't want it. If he's calling inside, I want outside. It's not going to work out very well. It's going to take a lot longer. One of the things that Rick really was instrumental in was speeding me up, making me work more quickly. It was Ray Miller, it was Rick Dempsey who would just catch the ball, hang the sign, and pretty much here we go. And that rhythm really started to get there for me.
How about today's pitchers? They don't even think 9 innings.
No, it's not even a consideration. I remember that year in 1980, I completed 9 games, and when everybody thought about 9 complete games, they went, 9 complete games, what's that? Because Palmer was completing 20 games. And in that era, 9 games was okay. It wasn't great. Now, you go a full season, you won't have, I don't think you'll have 2 teams completing 9 games as a team.
Steve, we come into this series right here a whole lot different. You're now watching the ball games and commenting like we are now. But a great rivalry here between the White Sox and the Orioles. Your team has gotten off to a fabulous start, and it's been about your pitching and your defense again.
Surprisingly enough, our team has gotten off to a great start because we've gotten much better defense than we had last year. Certainly, we've gotten timely hitting. We don't score early, but we've scored over 50% of our runs from the 7th through the 9th inning. The one thing about the Oriole team that reminds me back to when we played in the late 70s, early 80s, is that this team will hit the ball out of the ballpark. They'll catch everything. You got 2 errors in the infield, both by Davis. The third baseman, shortstop, and second baseman haven't made an error yet. That was like those late 70s, early 80s teams. And the pitching has been terrific. A couple of your young pitchers are very exciting to watch. I think the kid today, Gausman, is going to be a very good pitcher. He's got a great arm, and the question is, can he harness that 100 and then use a little finesse to go with it?
And when you go back in time, the players that played in that late 70s, early 80s with the Orioles. We got Steve Stone in the broadcast booth, Rick Dempsey, Jim Palmer, Ken Singleton in New York. What is it that you guys all gravitated to the booth?
We realized that it was difficult to make money in this life. We didn't want to get away from the game because none of us had any talent. We either could play the game or talk about it, and as far as going out into the real world, it scared us to death.
He's been doing it a long time, the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox. Steve Stone, again, who won 25 in 1980 for the Orioles, who won 100 games.